all-girls factor is often a question that girls will be asked in interviews. Why did you choose an all-girls school, right? Because we are unique. And I think our girls rock that question. They usually answer it beautifully. We actually practice it in the college seminars, right? But I think that colleges value, I'm not sure because we're all girls they value us in that way, but they value the fact that our students are driven and focused. And part of that has to do with the all girls. I think that they also like the fact that our girls are willing to take risks. And I think part of that speaks to Westover as a trusting community, right? Where you can take a risk in a classroom and offer an answer. A lot of our girls have found their voices in the classroom and are willing to ask questions and to speak up. And professors and colleges love that, right? When our kids are willing to entertain conversations and ask questions. 2 years ago, we had a student who went for a college visit, and she was sent to a class, and it was a religion class, and she was in Mr. Hungerford's Genesis class. And the teacher started asking questions, and no one was answering. And she said, I raised my hand, and I answered the question. Was that okay? And I think the teacher really appreciated that, right? It got the discussion going. She was busy. Okay? So our girls do that, right? They want to participate, they want to have questions. I think that part of that is being in an all-girls school and being given in your adolescence the ability to grow and gain confidence in who you are, so that when you launch yourself in a co-ed or single-sex community later, you have more confidence in your voice and your answers. And I think colleges understand that. The boarding piece is really interesting because I honestly, as the mom of a day student, I almost consider my daughter a boarder as well. I mean, she is home very little. My older daughter is home very little. My daughter, this year's daughter, is actually even home less. I think for me, the boarding component means that kids are already a little more independent. They probably know how to do their own laundry. They've lived away from home before. A lot of them have had to learn to monitor their own technology without the help of others, right? They've had to learn to wake themselves up in the morning and get their work done. And in some ways, in the boarding school community, you learn from making mistakes. You sleep through a class, and what happens? You get a detention on a Saturday night. So I guess they learn to manage their worlds more than a lot of adolescents do. And I think that colleges do value that boarding experience as kids who come with a little more maturity sometimes in some ways, and a little more ability to police the self. Small class sizes, I think that speaks for itself. I think our girls are actively communicating in classrooms and willing to have discussion because classes are small and so that their voice is there. WISE in the arts programs. Our WISE program, when our kids apply to colleges, especially in science and engineering, and they've been in our WISE program, they're eye candy for the colleges because they're not just saying, I think I might want to do engineering, they're saying, I spent 4 years looking at different types of engineering and I've taken computer science or I've done architectural engineering and all of those things, I think, allow colleges to see that they put the rubber to the road in those programs and it's not just an idea. And women in STEM these days are underrepresented. So that is a huge bonus for colleges and universities. I was up on a college tour in Vermont, gosh, the weeks are flying, 2 weeks ago now, I think. And UVM, they had the head of part of their engineering program, a woman, talking to us about how much she needs women engineers in her program and send her as many women engineers as possible. And I said, well, we might have a few here. Westover sports. Very few of our kids are actually thinking Division I or Division II. That's where you get scholarships for sports. And you have to register with the NCAA and go through the program and be approved before coaches can contact you. We have a number of D1 athletes. Some of them become D1 when they get there. We had a student go to Columbia, and she was a dancer here, and she emailed me in September and said, I need to clear through the NCAA. And as far as I knew, there was no Division I dance, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. She was a little bit of a thing, they grabbed her to be a cox in the crew team because she was loud and she was definitive in her decisions. So she was actually registering the NCAA to be a coxswain at Columbia, and she actually was a coxswain for 4 years at Columbia. A lot of our athletes are very strong. Athletes here are also recruited. We had a soccer player recruited to our crew for Holy Cross. Crew coaches believe that if they have a natural athlete, they can train her to become a great rower. So we have kids who are rowing for D1 or D2 who weren't rowing here. We've sent basketball players to D1. We've sent squash. Squash has one division, so it is actually, because there aren't as many squash programs, squash is one division in and of itself. So we have kids who play squash in college, volleyball, soccer, but a lot of our girls don't want to be told, here's a tutor, this is how you're going to live your life, this is the dining room you eat in, this is when you work out. So they want to play Division III, which is not nearly as overwhelming in terms of schedule, and they don't necessarily own you as a Division I or Division II program does. D1 and D2, I mean, they're paying for you to be there, right? They've invested in you. They want to make sure that they get that return on that investment. So a lot of our students will play Division III. That means that they can't get scholarships specifically for college, but they can get merit scholarships for things like their ability to do math. So sometimes those kids do get scholarships. But I think colleges value our athletic programs because they see the girls not only come in if they're going to play sports with discipline, but also I think colleges value the fact that we have a pretty strong program here because they understand their girls are able to juggle quite a bit. Not just academics with an afternoon free, but they're busy a long time, and that allows colleges to see that our girls are pretty good at managing their time and time management. Truth be told, I think our students are better productive students when they're participating in afternoon activities because they don't waste their time sitting around, they have to plan. A lot of our kids come back and say, I joined a team in college or I got active in college because I found that there was so much time off that I couldn't get myself motivated, but when I was playing sport or working out or a part of a team or a group, then because I had less time, I had to organize myself better. And a lot of our athletes actually work out in college because working out allows them to feel relaxed about their day too, that if they keep working out, it allows them to focus better. Last question on this, how do you leverage the relationships you and your office have built with college admissions departments in contrast to the general population, mostly the public schools and their guidance counselors, with whom our daughters will be competing for spots? I'm not quite sure that I would choose the word leverage, but I do think that part of my job is to make sure that colleges understand who we are and the caliber of our student. As I said, I just went to Vermont on a college tour. I travel a lot to understand about colleges so that I can understand fits for our kids, but I also go because it's important for me to be able to pick up the phone and call someone and advocate for a kid. I think that the difference between Westover and public institutions is that I counsel 50-odd kids a year. Most public counselors are counseling 250 to 500 kids. So I have the opportunity to follow up with colleges and ask questions. You know, a college like University of Michigan is going to make a decision with a computer. It's not going to want recommendations. It's going to look at GPAs and test scores, and you know these kids are in. So my ability to have conversations with a ginormous state school is much less than colleges that are mid to smaller size, where they're looking at recommendations and input. So I wouldn't say that that there's a magic bullet either way, but I can say that because the kids I have a smaller group and I can advocate for them, and I've worked very hard over the years to establish relationships with colleges, that I do not feel bad about picking up a phone and saying, how are we looking? Or, what's going on with this kid? You deferred her. What do I need to do to step it up and make sure that ends up with a good decision in the spring? And that's something I have to do constantly because college offices have turnover, right? Hopefully that person's leaving one office and going to another one I'm working with, but that doesn't always end up that way. So making sure that we continue to establish the relationships and the contacts with the schools is something that's very important. And why I really appreciate Ms. Falstick has been moving towards getting another full-time person in my office to help me manage things so that I can get out on the road more and do some more traveling, particularly in the spring. I tend to do about 4 or 5 trips a year, but it would be great if I could do more, because the more I get out there and people meet me, the more that people are going to understand our school. I think the other value of getting out there is that then colleges often come and visit us in the fall, and all I have to do is bring them into this building and have them see our kids, and they're sold on Westover, right? They can walk through Red Hall with the kids sitting here doing their homework and giggling and having a great time, but also very serious and working hard. They can look at our students enjoying what they're doing, right? And they can meet our students in the common room and have conversations with them, and they want to come back every year because they look at the value of the kids here, and they think that's important. Okay, any other questions in here? Should we keep it? Yeah, go ahead.
When you say you work with the kids and they're developing their list of potential schools in their own apply to, what's the range? You want to see 5 schools on the list, 10, 15? Where do you?
So the question is, with all the working with the kids, what's the number on the list that we're shooting for? So I think when we start out, there's a great passage from Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. If you haven't read it, it's a great read. Lots of great symbolism. But there's a passage where she talks about throwing out the net and seeing what comes in, and looking at all the experiences in her life that she's had and taking some time to reflect on experiences. I like to think that we throw out the net for colleges. We throw out the net and a bunch come in, and maybe we keep a couple and we toss a couple. So it's not going to be a small number to start with. I may say, like, let's look at 20 schools, do some research, go on Naviance, go to their website, maybe visit a few. Those early visits tend to allow me to figure out what really turns the kid on, right? The first visit, oh, I really didn't like this, but I really like this, Corky. Well, then the schools after that have to have some of that criteria, right? So the answer is it's probably going to start with a bigger list, and then it's going to melt, and it's going to evolve. The goal is to have, by the fall, a list that we can then categorize into flights. So the first flight may be early action, early schools, and we're going to be applying by November 1st and finding out by December. That flight is going to inform our knowledge of how the kid's being read. Is she getting financial aid? And so that actually allows us then to create a second flight of applications, right? Responding to that first flight. So we might start with 7 schools, maybe 4 early action. What comes back from those early action decisions, we may add a few or take a few away depending upon what we hear. So I guess the list is never really, like, it's our list and it's set. It has to be able to morph, and it's a little more organic than that. I don't ever hold them to it, right? You have to apply because you said you're going to, but maybe that school drops off that list for one reason or another. So the goal is about 7 in the end, maybe 10. If we're looking at some highly competitive, volatile market schools, then it may be closer to a list of 10, so that I feel more comfortable about how that's going to play out. But some kids apply to one school, get in, and they're done.
Can you explain the difference between early decision and early action, or is that the same?
Okay, so the different ways to apply. What are the different ways to apply? So this relates to seniors. And there are a number of variations, but the basic idea is there's something called rolling, which means within 3 weeks you get a decision. You submit your application, and within 3 weeks, pretty much, or sooner, you get a result. And you don't need to put down your deposit until May. We like rolling schools, right? No one argues with hearing a yes early on, right? And rolling actually takes a lot of the pressure off sometimes from the kids. Then there's something called early decision. Early decision is binding. You're saying, you are my one and only, right? I'm going to put a ring on it, right? And so I choose you, and if I apply and get in, I will be done. That locks you in. The one caveat for early decision is that if financially their offer does not meet your demonstrated need as the FAFSA determines it, then you can withdraw. You can say, I'm sorry, I can't go because you're not meeting my need. Early action is my favorite. You can apply early, you can find out early, you're not locked in, you don't have to answer until May, but you may shorten your list if you hear from an early school that you really want to go here. So for me, that's why those early applications are beautiful, because maybe I applied early action and it's my, out of my, out of my 10, it's in my top 5. Well, maybe I don't apply to my bottom 5, right? So that actually allows us to change the list up, right? Regular decision. So early action is usually by November 1st, and there may be an early action 2 round in January, so maybe 1 and 2. Regular is January, February applications, and you find out in the spring. So most kids will have a smattering of early action and regular. Some have some rolling. We do have a number who apply early decision, but unlike a lot of schools, it's not a huge number. Many of our kids want to have choices and they don't want to lock themselves in financially. Parents want to have choices and they don't necessarily want to lock themselves in, but we do have a number of kids every year that apply early decision. So it basically is, I look at what the students need, what the parents need, we look at the best rollout, and then we go to the advantage of the rollout. Yeah.
Do the schools have a certain percentage of applicants that they'll accept for the early decision and for the regular decision?
That's a very smart question. So the question is, do schools have a percentage or a quota for early decision and regular? And the answer is yes. And because the volatility of the market has increased, more schools are going to, if they have an early decision option, bless you, to accepting a larger percentage of their class early decision. So some are up to 40%, because then you've locked them in. And so that means that you're really only vying to fill 60% of your class, which actually colleges like, because they don't like you don't want to have empty beds, and you don't want to be over-enrolled. So it does calm the waters a little bit. It's, in my opinion, it's not necessarily in the best interest of the student, but it does serve the institutions. So the caveat to that is there a bonus or is there benefit from going after it? Right. For some, the early decision, I'm putting my money on you, can give you a little bump in the right direction because you're choosing them. So it can give kids who may be marginal a little bump in terms of how they're reading with colleges.
But what about the early action?
Early action is also showing that you're interested in the school, but example for this year with Northeastern, you can show interest, but holy cow, 22,000 applications. So in that case, that's going to be one of those schools that is going to choose the spark bogey from the top, and they're going to defer a big group of kids because they have no idea how much are coming out regular, right? And then maybe in the deferred pool, those kids that normally would get in anyway. They just have to wait a little longer. But the goal is for kids to have more than one choice at the end of the day, to apply to a list of colleges that they love, so no matter what, they have great options, and hopefully working with you as parents, I can make sure that there are also good financial options. Our seniors are very generous with sharing with me their financial aid awards and their merit money. I know where colleges historically over the last 5 years have been handing out 15 grand just because you're really smart and they want you to come, and 15 over 4 years is a free year of college. Right? So sometimes that's very helpful. Even parents who don't necessarily demonstrate need on paper, that might be very helpful along the way. So it's important for me to know if aid is going to be important. And we can, and the kids actually also find it quite flattering when they get aid, and that makes them feel good about themselves as well. Yeah. Yeah.
If a girl knows pretty much what she wants to do, is it wise to take her already on college visits the summer before her junior year?
So the question is, if a girl really knows what she wants to do, is it wise to take her in the summer before her junior year? I would say it's I'm not sure I'd use the words wise, but I think it's a great idea to expose her to what's out there. But I would say I'd really love to spend time with her first, getting her ready to understand what a tour and an information session is, appropriate questions to ask, how to make the best use of the visit, because I'd hate for her to go and then come back and say, you know, I wish I'd visited later because I would have known more about what to look for. We talk a lot about, you know, what happens on the tour, what to look for on the tour, questions to ask, stopping to talk to students, getting their beat on things. I always tell parents that if they're in the back of the line, they can sort of observe the world. Do the students look happy? Are they on their cell phones? Are they interacting? What's the physical plant like? Pick up a newspaper. You know, so you as a parent can be doing reconnaissance while the student is talking to the student. But I'd love to sit down with her first and talk about those things, because if you're going to invest the time and the money in doing that, I think it's best for her to at least be teed up a little bit in terms of what to expect and what to look for. Even small things like I encourage the juniors to keep a journal so that they can write down their immediate reaction before you talk to them, right? So that after a while those visits all blend together, and especially if you're going with a younger kid, you know, 2 years down the road it might be something very different. So keeping notes and even questions that they might then return to an admissions officer with, names of people that they might have met, which might be important later on. So if you're going to do that, it would be good just to meet a couple times and make sure that she's, you know, she's in the gate. And knowledge is power with our girls. If you give them the knowledge, they take it and they own it. So it's important for them to have that. Yeah. Any other questions?
And I apologize if you
No,
asked
please.
that already, I was a little late. But in regards to scholarships, are the girls pretty much searching on their own, or are they being pointed in certain directions where they can find the information they need to have?
So the question is about scholarships, and do they find them on their own, or are they pointed in the right direction? How does that happen? So the first thing I always tell kids is that you should go to your local high school, because some of our kids get the most money from the local scholarships because they're very strong and very competitive kids. So even here, Region 15 sends me a list of scholarships that our local kids can apply for over time, and it's wonderful. But I get often towns contiguous to Westover, Middlebury, sometimes not always. So your local high school is a great place to start. With homeschooling now, high schools have to have sort of a packet to give to students who don't attend that may live in the town, so it's much easier than it used to be. So that's number one. If a student here, so something I do here is if I get national scholarships, I just send them, I forward them. If it comes in paper, I scan it and send it in an email, and if it comes in an email, I forward it to all of the students. I just sent one today for engineering, architecture, mechanical, electrical, and chemical engineering. So I shot that out to my seniors. So the kids will get information if it's pertinent. Sometimes I get if you live in the Litchfield County, and then I'll send kids who live in Litchfield County. So anything I get, I tend to spam out or feed out to the kids which is appropriate. So visiting your local high school is one. Coming for me, that's another. And then there are a number of scholarship websites like FAST Web, F-A-S-T Web. And the thing about FastWeb is that that's almost something that parents can help with, because if you put in my daughter's, does a ton of community service, she's interested in education, she's an honor student, if you put all that in there, there may be 500 scholarships that come up. And so if you can sort through them and, oh yeah, no, but she doesn't have asthma, she can't do this one, you know what I mean? So, but again, if she has asthma, there are a lot of scholarships for her. So I'm just saying that there are things, I get Connecticut Women's Bowling Association. I don't know who's Grandmother Bowls, I really don't. But guess what, if you're Grandmother Bowls, there's a great scholarship for you. So that's the type of stuff where parents can help filter that, and there's one if you write about the fire sprinkler system in your school, and you can earn money for that, so woohoo. Some of them involve service. Have you done service? Some of them are for athletes. I know Katie Eggert has been working very hard to nominate our student athletes for all sorts of things as they come up to her in her office. So I think there are a lot of places you can look. Your church is another one. We have students apply at their churches if they belong to a parish or a religious organization. That's another one. Here in Middlebury, there's the Rotary, there's the Lions Club, there's, what are some other ones our kids have done here? There's a Middlebury Fund, there's one for people who live in Middlebury. I got one yesterday for a neighborhood in Waterbury. If you live in this neighborhood, there is a scholarship for you. So the local ones I send out to the kids, and I'm hoping they're paying attention. I do create a list of them. I guess I can provide that online for parents, but they change all the time, so it's a little hard to keep that. But the Fast Web would be a great resource as well. And that's something if you can filter through, it's very helpful, because if a student looks at 500, she's just going to close it. She's going to open it up and say, oh, good God, I've got a chemistry test, and then it's going to be closed and it's not going to get looked at. So, yeah. But, and then again, if you have scholarships, if the senior parents have scholarships, I have a form for the kids, they give it to me. How is it going to be submitted? Am I mailing it? Am I uploading it? Does your gear have to go with my gear? What do you need? Recommendations, transcripts, what's the deadline? And then I follow through with that with the kids so that we get everything out on time. And that's really important, the deadlines. There's a Big Y scholarship. There's a Dunkin' Donuts scholarship. They're national scholarships. But as I said, our kids tend to have a better yield on the local scholarships than they do to the national scholarships. We did have a student earn the Gates Millennium Scholarship 2 years ago, and that's a beauty of a scholarship. But you have to be first gen, you have to be an underrepresented population, you have to have a certain GPA and test scores to qualify for that. So it is a tiny percentage of the population that even qualifies. If they get it, it's awesome, but it's a smaller. And then the other thing to do is to look at the college websites. There are scholarships available on the college websites. Sometimes the kids have to apply separately. A lot of the times the kids will be automatically considered with their application, which is another way to get scholarships through the colleges. Other questions? Yeah?
So the girls will come home for March break with a list, and that's when you should be looking for visits? I'm just trying to understand, between now and March, are we supposed to be helping them schedule some visits?
Well, so the question is, should the junior girls be coming home with a list over March break, and should parents be helping schedule? The answer is, the goal is yes, for our juniors to start meeting with me pretty soon. Some of them are more eager than others. Some have already met with me, and some are afraid to sign up. So I keep track of who I've met with, and if I haven't seen her, maybe I send her a little invitation saying, please come. It would be very helpful if parents could help arrange it, only because of, for me, I'd love the kids to call and say, I'd like to make an appointment, right? But some of them are not as cognizant of distance and driving and timing and parents' schedules, when you're working, when you're not, can you get them there? So it's helpful if you as a parent say, I've got 2 days over spring break. We can get within this radius of home. What are some schools we might look at, and how can we arrange some visits? That's really helpful. They don't all have to be done right now, but just a couple under their belt will allow them to learn a lot more about what they're interested in.
So when are those lists going to be mailed so that we can, I just don't even know where to begin.
Right, so I could sit down with your daughter and say, what are your opportunities, over spring? Do you have a day or two that you can go and visit? Can mom and dad take time off from work? And then, what are some things we're thinking about? We talk about 30,000 feet right now. From 30,000 feet, what are some of the things that might be really interesting in a college? Number one is I want co-ed, just to share with you parents, I'm sorry. That tends to be the first one that comes out of their mouth, right? I'm done with all girls, which is too bad because there are a lot of great women's colleges. But in general, that's usually the first, qualifier. And so we could say, okay, well, maybe you're toying between medium and large or medium and small. So let's look at a medium and a small one. And then, okay, well, are you gonna be able to spend the night? Could you go and spend the night and see 2 in a day? Or are you thinking about like Boston for our kids here, right? Boston's pretty close. So if you get up early enough in the morning, you can drive to Boston, see school in the morning, go to lunch, see school in the afternoon, and then come home, right? And that could be just one day.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, there's a dartboard, I don't even know what school to point her in a direction.
Right, that's
So
where the
just-
criteria
okay,
comes
so
in.
the Naviance that you're telling us about?
Yep.
Is that something that we sign up for as well?
Right, so we will send you your login information
Okay.
right at the beginning of spring break.
Okay.
And the dartboard should be much smaller because I met with the kids and said, here are a couple to look at.
Okay.
So, so you're from Connecticut and you're thinking maybe small to medium, and you don't want to be in a city, but you want to be close enough to a city that there aren't just 4 pizza places and a Dunkin' Donuts. Middlebury. And so, so what are we thinking about? And we live in Watertown, and our parents both work, so maybe we've got one day to go. Right? Where would we look? Small, medium, access to a city. What do we want to study? I don't know what I want to study, Corky, but I really love art history and math. Okay, so maybe liberal arts, right? So that we can have a broad range of opportunities. Maybe Boston. Right, Boston's pretty close, within 2 hours, maybe we could do a Boston trip, okay. Co-ed, absolutely, Corky, all right. Is there anything else? I don't want Greek life, okay, not Greek life. All right, so maybe we're thinking Boston, maybe we're thinking small and medium, maybe we're thinking access to a city but not in a city, or a city campus with a community, right? So maybe we look at Wheaton in Norton, Mass, right? Liberal Arts College, a little left of center was women's college and went co-ed. Great opportunities for study abroad and internships between Boston and Providence on the train line, so I can get where I want to go. Or maybe we'll get a little closer to Boston just to see if we like the city a little better. So maybe we'll look at Tufts, or maybe we'll look at Northeastern, although that's bigger. Maybe we'll look at Stonehill, right, which is similar college. Or maybe we're interested in faith-based schools. Maybe we want Jesuit schools. Or maybe we want mid-range schools. So maybe we look at a different size of school, right? Providence is another great place to go. Providence College, right? Jesuits. Well, the Friars, we love the Friars, right? Kids who want great sports events. I want a school with sporting events. I want to be sporty, I want to paint myself purple, and I want to scream on a Saturday night, right? Providence has a phenomenal hockey team and also a phenomenal basketball team. So I guess my point is, if we're just throwing out the net, even if you're thinking about the dartboard, those first 2 visits, that kid is going to come back with, these are some things I really liked. And that's going to help us narrow the list. Even if both of those schools don't necessarily end up on the list at the end of the day, those schools have informed us about things that your daughter wants. And it's going to help you, because in the car on the way home, you're going to say, so what did you think? And she's going to tell you why she liked it or didn't like it, which is going to allow you to think, oh, it's not a dartboard, because now I'm only looking at a smaller percentage of schools. So it can seem overwhelming, but really it gets small pretty quickly. It really does. You know, if you don't want a school of 36,000 friends, we can take those right off the table, right? When I was up in Vermont 2 weeks ago, I was very impressed with UVM because it's actually a mid-sized school. It's about 10,000. Burlington is a funky city, right? People look all shapes and sizes, colors of hair, liberal to conservative. I think it's a purple state. But Burlington has great little eateries and shops and lots going on. You can ski within a matter of minutes from there if you're an outdoors kid. What a great opportunity. A lot going on in their campus. And I was pretty impressed because, you know, I used to think UVM was a mid-sized school and there wasn't a lot going on, but the campus has really grown since the last time I was on the campus.
Is UVM the University of Vermont?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you for telling me
Yep,
that.
yep, in Burlington, great little city. And so again, that's a city that's gentle enough for kids who maybe want urban but don't want New York City, right? There's a lot going on, things to do in the evenings. There are a number of colleges right there that the kids can visit and share with. I wouldn't go to UVM to watch basketball right now. Sorry if anybody's watching who's a fan, they're not doing very well. But there's a lot going on on campus, which I was very impressed with. Stores is very fascinating to me, right? UConn is the size of a city. It's in the middle of not city, right? But it is the size of a city. You take buses around campus. So even UConn has a different feel than it did 10 or 15 years ago.
My friend gave me a book, it was, because my son is a senior now, and it's called like 375 Best Colleges or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really helpful.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he said he was like really into finance, and he wanted a trading floor, I started going, like, I kind of helped him narrow that
Right.
down.
Helped
But
him.
with that book.
And Naviance will help you do the same
Yeah.
thing. Naviance will help
Right.
you do the same thing. Because you can put in the criteria and it will give you a list of schools.
And then like also in the book, it'll tell you like they interview kids who go to school there, they get
Right.
an opinion
Right.
on what the school campus is like, what like the overall feel, how people dress.
And the books that are great are the ones that have the students' input, not
Yeah.
the ones that have the college. Another
Yeah.
book that I recommend if you're feeling at all stressed about the college process is The Colleges That Change Lives by Lauren
Yeah.
Pope. It's about colleges that value students and why they value students, and they're student-centered institutions. They're all over the country. We send kids to them every year. They're just great schools and good matches for our kids as well. So that's another one that can help you sort of, and if you find yourself wherever you are, feeling ramped up and anxious, pick up the phone and call me, right? Because I can help you with that. I can talk you off the ledge, right? If you're getting talked to the hand, pick up the phone and call me. I'll have a conversation with the student. I'll give you a call back, right? The whole idea is to work together and not to get too excited or overwhelmed about the process. We're just toeing into the water, just like our daughters who are taking the ACT on Saturday, right? We're just starting the process. But because we're starting it early, we are actually in a great place to make those steps slowly and confidently. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you for whomever's listening, wherever you are. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to call or shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. We're on Gmail now. I'm feeling very accomplished. I've switched over and I now can open my email by myself. All right, have a good day.
Thank you for it.
Absolutely.